Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. Today, I'm mounting LED driving lights to the front bumper of my Gladiator. If you'd like to see which lights I've chosen, how I go about wiring it and getting it all set up, stick around. I'll get into all the details right now. So you can see here, I've actually already mounted the driving lights. I did that off camera because it only took about 3 minutes. The holes along the front of the bumper that used to be the winch cover plate, those bolt holes actually are perfect for mounting the two driving lights. So it's super simple. These lights come with a bracket and I just bolted them right on just to see how they look and see if that's where I want them to be. As I said in the last video, the chances of hitting a kangaroo in Australia are actually really high, and that's why I wanted the radiator protection, and that's also why I'm adding driving lights. So obviously the best way to avoid hitting a kangaroo is to actually be able to see it, and they really are most active at dawn and at dusk when it's really difficult to see. So having driving lights that really punch out into the distance and illuminate the ditch on both sides, that's going to help me see them coming. Hopefully I can brake before I ever hit one. So I wanted driving lights that really punch out there. The way I like to wire driving lights is that I have them on when my high beams are on. So that means there won't be any oncoming drivers and I don't need to worry about blinding anyone else. As soon as a driver comes towards me, obviously I turn off my high beams, which will turn off the driving lights. So when they are on, they can be as big and as bright as I want them to be. And that's why I've chosen the ones I have. These are called Venoms. These are made by Lightforce, which is an Australian company. These lights are made right here in Australia, but they are available in North America as well. And Lightforce have been making driving lights for a very long time. And what I really like about them is they obviously understand Australian tough conditions. The waterproof rating, the dust, the vibration, all of that stuff. Lightforce have been designing and building lights for a very long time. And these ones actually come with a 3-year warranty. So let's be honest, they wouldn't offer a 3-year warranty unless they knew these lights were up to the tough conditions. And so I'm really confident these are going to be more than sufficient for my needs, as well as lasting through all of the mud and all of the dust and all of that. So when it comes to mounting them, as I said, it's super easy. Find a spot on your bumper. I mean, I could have put them on top of the hoop. I could have put them in 100 different places. But I like having them here on the front bumper, keeping everything contained and kind of all within this hoop. And they are recessed a little bit behind the face of the bumper. So even a tiny impact or a tree branch or something like that, it shouldn't get in there and mess with the lights. They're just a little bit protected by the bumper. In terms of the beam length on these lights, I'm just looking here on the specs. They say they push out to 850 meters at 1 lux. So that's well over 3/4 of a kilometer. You still get 1 lux of light. That is absolutely insane. And I can't wait to get these things wired up. And then tonight I'll go for a drive out in the backcountry and I'll show you just how far they push out. I think I'm going to be a little bit staggered. That's fantastic to be able to see kangaroos and road hazards absolutely as far in the distance as possible. These lights too, right now I have the clear cover on the front of them, but the cover just comes off really easily and you can get covers in a variety of different colors. I have the clear ones right now, but you can get amber light covers, which would be really good in the fog. You can get pink, you can get all kinds of different colors. And I really like how quickly it comes off and how interchangeable they are. So even if I use these for 40,000 miles or something, if they get a little bit scratched or a little bit pitted, it's no problem just to change out to a different cover. And because they are clear covers too, I think I'm going to use these lights a lot more than I used my lights in Africa. I feel like they're here, they're mounted, I'm going to wire them up to my high beams. So that means whenever I'm driving into the evening, as soon as I flick on my high beams, these guys are going to flick right on, which is great. These lights also have a whole bunch of different operating modes, and it depends how you wire them up and what you want to do with your vehicle. So obviously they have full intensity, as it's called, which is just, absolute full strength driving lights, which again, I'm only going to have on when my high beams are on. You also have a low power mode, which you can wire up so that that will come on when your low beam lights are on. So just provides additional lighting, but obviously isn't going to blind oncoming drivers. And as well as that, they have a daytime running light mode as well, which makes them run on a very low setting, kind of like when your headlights are on the very low setting, just to make you more visible during the daytime, probably help other drivers to see you and hopefully reduce the chances of a crash. And when it comes to wiring them up, you really have a lot of different options. The lights themselves just come with bare pigtails and you can wire that any way you want. Or what I did is I picked up Lightforce's wiring harness. So this is their kit that really makes it plug and play and makes it really simple. And the wiring harness right now, it looks like this. And funny enough, it's not that different than the wiring harness I used for the air compressor. Essentially, it's a relay. It has a big 12 volt positive and a big 12 volt negative that goes straight to the battery. Then it has a couple of different trigger wires. And depending on how you wire it up, that's how you can turn them on and off. You could just wire it directly to a switch if you wanted to, so you're in control. You could obviously piggyback off your high beams. You can do a bunch of different things. And Lightforce, this kit comes with switches that you can put on your dash so that you're in control how you want it to be, whether daytime mode is on, whether high beam mode is on, all of that kind of thing. And so what I need to do now is start running this wiring, figure out where I'm going to mount the relay and how I'm going to pick up trigger wires. And because my Jeep has the auxiliary switches on the dash, I figure I may as well use one of those. So what I'm planning to do is wire this whole setup so that I have an auxiliary switch on the dash, that switch has to be on, and then when I turn my high beams on, the lights will come on. So it actually requires both of those things to be true. And I like it that way so that I can not use them if I want, or when a car is coming, it makes it really easy just to turn them off again. I don't have to actually turn off the high beams and turn off the driving lights. Simply turning off the high beams does that for me. And I don't have to stress that I'm blinding oncoming traffic. So that's how I'm going to wire them up for my use case, but obviously you can wire them up however you want. I know some people really love to have a switch on the dash that you can just flick that switch at any time and that'll make the lights come on. So you could even do that in camp, even if your engine's off, just so you can see what you're doing. And that has its uses. I can see why some people would like that. I personally am not going to, because that's not how I want my vehicle. But the next step is to start figuring out how to run the wiring harness and get it all connected together. So now what I have to do is find a place to mount the relay, and space is at a premium under this hood. Let me tell you, I'm going to tuck it in here behind this headlight. I've been practicing, I'm sure it's going to fit. Before I do that though, I need to start running the wires that actually go to the two driving lights. And thoughtfully, one of the wires is significantly longer than the other because obviously one's pretty close, but the other one's going to be on the other side of the vehicle. So I'll play around here for a while, start getting all of these wires in the position that I want them, start zip tying everything down, and then get it all finished up. And this is usually the point where you have to use your multimeter, you have to figure out which one of these wires is actually high beam, and then usually you cut into it or you splice into it and use that to trigger your driving light relay. But Lightforce know that that's not ideal, messing around trying to find the right wire, cutting factory wiring looms. I don't really want to do that on my brand new vehicle if I can help it. So as part of their wiring kit, they include a couple of patch harnesses, as they call them. And the two that came with the kit, this is the plug I know that was on my previous Jeep Wrangler, the one I drove around Africa. And then I guess this is another common kind of headlight plug. And basically all they do is they break out the low and the high beam wire so that you can patch in where you need to without actually cutting any factory wiring. I think this is fantastic. And so what I bought was Lightforce Cell, a patch harness specifically for my Jeep Wrangler or Gladiator, the new model since 2018. So all I have to do here is unplug the factory headlight harness like that. Now I plug in Lightforce's patch harness, and now all I do, plug it back into the headlight, and that's it. I haven't had to cut any wires. I haven't had to figure out anything with a multimeter. Obviously, this is entirely reversible if I ever decide to in the future. And right now, I've got 3 separate breakout wires. And I have to just double check again, it's in the little booklet that came with it. I believe the red wire is the high beam trigger wire. The green one I think is an earth, and the blue one is the low beam trigger wire. So right now I can wire into my relay, wire into my driving lights, and pick up whichever one of those I want. And I haven't had to cut anything, I haven't had to permanently modify anything. So again, Lightforce really thinking this through and creating a kit that is so comprehensive. I mean, it's plug and play. As strange as that sounds, it's actually true. And so to wire this whole thing up, all I need to do is wire the trigger wire into the high beam, which is actually just a matter of getting it off the relay and plugging it into this spade connector. That's it. It's actually wired up just like that. Then I need to connect the relay to an earth, which Jeep have provided an earth right here on the body inside. So that's super easy to pick up as well. And then to get 12 volts to the relay, what I've decided to do is use one of the Jeep auxiliary switches on the dashboard. So those are fused and rated, 2 of them for 15 amps and 2 of them for 40 amps. And when I read the literature on the new driving lights, they draw 5.6 amps each. So what's that, about 11.2 amps? So 15 amps gives me a little bit of headroom, a little bit of safety. So I can wire this into one of the Jeep auxiliary switches that just needs 15 amps. And so what that means is, without the auxiliary switch on, the relay will never be able to get power and it'll never turn on, and the driving lights will never come on. Even when I turn on high beam, even though I've picked up the trigger wire, the relay won't be triggered because it doesn't have 12 volts on the other terminal. Then when I turn on the auxiliary switch, only when this is high will the relay trigger and the driving lights will come on. So in that way, I've achieved what I wanted, where the auxiliary is like a master off switch. If that is off, the driving lights will never come on. But if the auxiliary switch is on, then I need to turn on the high beams and that makes the driving lights come on. That's exactly how I want it to function, and it's going to work perfectly. So all I need to do now is tuck the relay and the wiring, mount it somewhere, and then reassemble the factory headlight, the grille, put it all back together, and I'm finished. And in terms of picking up an auxiliary wire from the Jeep, they make it really easy. I'm over here on the left-hand side of the vehicle because this is where my battery box and fuse box is. If you're in North America, this is all on the other side of the Jeep. But here in Australia, this is where the auxiliary wires come out. So these wires provided by Jeep, these are the ones I was mentioning, you can control these from the switches on the dash. So all I have to do is look up in the manual, figure out which one of these wires I want to use, and I'll connect that to the power source of the relay that I'm going to mount down here behind the headlight. So obviously it's all super easy. I don't have to run wires very far. This is really convenient. And when I'm done, on the dashboard, on the screen, I can even configure that switch so it will remember its state between engine starts. So I'll probably leave the switch on 99 days out of 100, and the Jeep will remember that. And then that way my high beams will just trigger those driving lights. As soon as I hit the high beams, the driving lights will be on. So this is really straightforward and simple to do. So I finished running all of the wires, I tucked the relay in and mounted it, and everything's nicely zip tied here to the lower radiator support. And so I just plugged the headlight back in. Let's give it a test and see if it works. Now, when I turn the regular headlights on, the driving lights won't come on, but when I hit high beam, they should come on. So that's regular headlights, no driving lights. And then there we go, driving lights on. And let me tell you, they are some kind of bright. So I have to finish up here. The headlight's not fully bolted in. I have to put the grille back on, lots of little things to tidy up. And then let's go for a drive tonight and we'll see how bright these things really are. And so as I finish reinstalling the grill here to finish the job, just some final thoughts. I feel like I'm really impressed overall with the quality of the lights, of the wiring harness. The lights all come with stainless steel hardware and nylock bolts. All looks really high quality and obviously well weather sealed. The wiring harness comes with really sweet shielding and insulation, and the instructions also have been really clear and really good. And I really like too, in the instructions, it doesn't just tell you one way to wire them. It says, if you want to wire it the way I have, where it's on your high beams, here's how you go about that. If you would rather wire it a different way, here's how you go about that. And so it has multiple different options depending on kind of the end result that you're looking for. And so yeah, really high quality product. Not surprising if they come with a 3-year warranty and they've been making them for 35 years. But all that's left to do now is we have to wait until the sun goes down, and I'm pretty keen to go for a drive tonight, and let's see what it looks like when you have headlights that push out to 850 meters. I can't believe it, that's half a mile. They push out 1 lux of light. I think this is going to be impressive. All right, everyone, here we are. It's a few hours later, and I've just come out for a drive for the first time with the new driving lights. And so I'm out on this country road. I'm only 10 minutes from town, but you can see it is seriously dark outside. That's my low beams right now. So if I turn everything off, you can see it's pretty dark outside. So that's low beams right now. And remember, these are some of the best headlights I've ever had in my whole life, these stock LEDs. Then if I turn high beams on, that's stock Jeep high beam. And now if I use my OG switch, I can turn on the driving lights we just installed. And that's what the driving lights do. So the driving lights are making a huge difference in terms of how far into the distance I can see. It actually is staggering me, the difference that it makes. And what happens is I drive along for 5 minutes here with the driving lights on, and I become so used to them that it just feels normal and like this is what I expect from a headlight. And then if I turn the driving lights off, I'll do that just as I crest this hill here. So I'm leaving Jeep high beams on, but I'll go driving lights off right now. You can see the enormous difference that it makes. Suddenly it's like I'm on low beam or something. So I'll go back to driving light. And you can see not only do they punch out into the distance a really long way, they're also filling in a lot of the mid-ground. So a lot of the stuff that's maybe like 20 or 30 car lengths away from me is really filled in on the side of the road. And I feel confident that I'd be able to see a kangaroo or whatever else is hiding in there. So I'll show you again, this is so crazy. This is currently driving lights. Now I go down to just Jeep high beam, which seems crazy. And then if I go low beam, it's like I can't even see it all. It's like I don't even have lights on. So for me, back to regular Jeep high beam. And as I crest the hill, I'll go back to spotlights. Here we go. That is spotlights now. You can see all the way to that yellow sign in the far distance is lit up really well. So these driving lights, they're only 150 millimeters. They're only drawing 5.4 amps each. So they're not even using a huge amount of power, and they're not big and heavy, but they are making an immense difference to how far I can see into the distance. And I really love that I've wired them up on the high beam circuit. So all I have to do is bump the stalk like that, and I go back down to low beams, and the driving lights go off at the same time. So that's definitely how I like to have my lights wired. And I believe here in Victoria in Australia, this is actually the law. Your driving lights have to be tied to your high beam lights like that, so that you can't blind oncoming drivers, and that it's really easy to turn them off. You don't have to flick more than one switch. I'm on low beams, I know that my driving lights are off. But here we go again, when I flick up to high beam now, like that's high beam and driving light now. And again, look how far into the distance I can see. So there's a tiny little bit of tweaking to do. I'd say once I've finished building the Jeep and it is sitting at its correct weight, maybe it'll be a little bit lower in the rear. So maybe then I'll just tweak the angle of the driving lights just a little bit. I'll come out in the dark again and I'll tinker, I'll tilt them a few degrees down, a few degrees up, and I'll see which one I prefer that gets me like maximum visibility into the distance. But overall, this has been a great addition to the Jeep. I'm really happy that I can see into the distance now and, you know, hopefully severely reduce the chances of a kangaroo impact. So that finishes the install of the Lightforce driving lights, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope it's been helpful teaching you what you need for lighting on your overland vehicle. If it has been helpful, do hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Plenty more upgrades coming on this Jeep Gladiator so I can drive it all the way around Australia. Still have to add a drinking water tank, still have to add an extra gas tank, and of course fit out the whole bed with a kitchen, a fridge, lots and lots of camping gear, and a custom rear canopy that I'm having designed and built that I think is going to really meet my needs for keeping it lightweight, but also keeping everything in the bed out of the rain and out of the dust. So if you'd like to get behind the scenes content, learn more about what I've got planned, I'm posting all of that stuff over on Patreon. For my supporters over there, they get exclusive behind the scenes access, early access to all my videos, and they get to view them ad-free as well. So there's a link in the description. Check it out over on Patreon right now. Once again, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road.